I want to share an update with the procedural planets that I'm working on in Unity, and I thought I'd give a little more of a walkthrough video this time, so rather than just putting up some random animations. In Unity, I'm watching the game view. I've just put a temporary background there, and I've got a planet that spawned there, and I wanted to show you that you can, something I added today was the ability to animate parameters during runtime. And basically you can, in your scripts, you'll be able to add a property animation. So for example, you want to change the atmosphere external size, the density, and liquid level. So from the liquid level should go from 0, so no liquid at all, to 0.46, so about half the planet should be filled with liquid. And it should start after a delay, and it should last for 10 seconds, and then it should not loop. So, and I've animated a number of properties here to transform this planet, which is a Mars-like type of a dust planet, into basically terraform it into a terrestrial planet similar to Earth. And to do that, I want to introduce the atmosphere, and I want to change the atmosphere color. I want to introduce liquid from 0 to about half the planet. I want to switch the biome balance because I've got 2 biomes, and it's mainly this one that's visible now, which is the iron oxide biome, and the other one, as you can see, is a rainforest one. So I want to fade that one in. I want to fade the clouds in from 0 opacity to 1 opacity over a period of time. I want to change the color variation of this biome so it goes more green. And finally, I want to populate the planet with population and then also advancement. Advancement is that the cities won't just be scattered, they'll be a little bit more complex cities. So basically, we should be able to see this in action now when I press play. You'll be able to see that these parameters are starting to animate, and basically I guess you could say that it's terraforming the planet. So this is real time now. It starts to fade in the green forest, it introduces liquid, and it starts to fade up the atmosphere. And the performance is, I was quite happy with it. I thought it was just the shader effects that were going to be really fast, but actually the procedural textures are proving to be fast enough to do this. Now I'm fading in the parameters for the night lights, the cities. So it gradually just populates the planet, and down here are the advancement, produces these a little bit more complex cities. So there's some other animation going on. I'm moving the light source as well, and the camera field of view slightly. And here you see the iron oxide also faded from red to green, and then here's the rainforests, and then you have the clouds here that were faded in as well. So yeah, and when I stop that, it'll reset back to the original parameters that were not animated. Another thing I implemented today was the ability to export and import to clipboard, and I basically just creates a base 64 text string out of the planets, and if I copy this one that I exported earlier, I just copy that into the clipboard, and then I import from clipboard. It'll change all the parameters to that particular planet. And also, if I just do this one, for example, import, you'll see that yeah, it brought in the parameters, so it remembers which ones, the ones that are orange here are overridden. They override the random value. So if I were to create a new planet, let's say I want to modify this one slightly, I can either reset the overrides or I can keep the overrides. So if I click on random seed now, it'll create a new planet, but it will keep these forced values for the planet. So if I do random now, it'll change some of the parameters here. Let's see, what was it that turned out to be green? It's probably this forest, with high saturation. Maybe I want to tweak that down a little bit like that. And so here's a new similar planet, since a lot of these are overridden still. So it's a similar planet, but as you can see, it looks totally different anyway, because of just some of these parameters were changed with the biome types and some of the colors. So we should be able to play the animation now again and see how this planet, what it looks like when this one fades. So it'll animate the same type of thing with the liquid, the atmosphere fade in, and the biome switch. And there we go. So it gradually fades in the forest, which turns out to be quite a light one on this planet. See that the normal map is quite high on this one, so it looks a bit rasterized. So this terraformed this alternative planet then into one with an atmosphere. And so if I wanted to keep this planet now as well, I can stop this one, and then I copy this to clipboard, I export to clipboard, and then I can keep this one if I wanted to come back to that one. And then if I copy this one that I exported earlier, I can import the values from this one. I'll be also make sure that you can export to a prefab and in other formats. This is mainly for when I'm doing testing to make sure I don't, if I come up with a planet that I like, I want to be able to keep the values of it. So that's basically it. Yeah, I guess I can also run through some of the parameters here that you see to show what effect they have. You can switch the texture sizes now. Max value for the different textures are 2048 by 2048. That'll make the planet perform a bit slower. As you can see, if I go down even to 512, you get quite decent quality still. It's updating these textures live now. We should be able to, let's fade in the biomes. This is blending the biomes, so if I change the balance here, I'll be able to fade in the two, and then let's say we wanted to make this one darker, the iron oxide. Oh, I changed it. Oh yeah, I know why. It's because it's I haven't excluded the animation from the editor. We'll have to switch that off. Here we go. So if we want to change the biome there a bit, maybe the brightness, let's keep that quite dark for the iron oxide. Then we can change these as well to dust or desert. And now you see that it is quite, it is 512 by 512, and basically there are square textures that are wrapped around the planet, but you get away with, you see some tiling, especially if you don't have any water on the planet, but as soon as you introduce liquid on the planet, usually that breaks up, so you don't really see the tiling as much. Let's switch these back to at least 1024 is probably a good trade-off quality and performance-wise. And then this composition, you can change what type. I'll be adding more different types, but these are just different ways the textures are blended with the splat maps. So fractured. Let's do some fading between these so you can see. So composition balance, you can change the balance of the composition. So it basically takes this biome, the desert biome, and the rainforest biome, and it changes the balance between these. And these are the type of parameters that you can animate in real time if you need. And the contrast will say if it should crossfade a bit more. And let's bring down the saturation a bit. This parameter up here called alienization, that's just something I came up with, and that's to bring Earth-like planets, and so the normal biomes, and then just creating some crazy color shift. So it's just a quick thing to make a planet look a bit more alien-like or non-traditional. And then let's bring the atmosphere in. So this is the size of the atmosphere. Let's change the color. Let's say we wanted a more orange one here. And then here's the density. And then the internal density. That basically is the rim shading on it. And then liquid is it's the specular color that you can set if you want the reflection in the water. And then other parameters are the seed of the continents, so you can just change the continents. Let's bring this back down. Continent size, basically that controls the tiling of the height map or the composition map. So, and then let's bring up the continent size a bit like that again. And then here's some other type of composition maps. Liquid level again. And then here's also the liquid opacity. So you can make the water a bit transparent if you want. So let's say it was really shallow water, for example. Then maybe you'd want something like that. And then also you have a shallow distance, and basically that's if it should, you can see now there are sharp lines here by the water, and then if you shallow distance will fade those instead. So basically it would be gradually getting deeper, for example. And then the specular power controls what the reflection should look like. Polar caps controls, well, maybe we shouldn't have yellow ice. White. Polar caps determines how much ice should come down from the poles. Twilight color controls what the transition from day to night side should be like. That looks unrealistic, obviously, so you'd keep that on a slight orange usually. And what else? So clouds, we have cloud opacity. That just if you slide it all the way down, you disable the cloud, so it doesn't. The shader disables it as well, so it doesn't render it then. Let's keep that at max for now, and then you can change the seed of the clouds. Roughness is the normal map of the clouds. Usually keep that quite low just to get a slight effect. And then cloud coverage. All the clouds are consists out of 3 separate layers, and this coverage one controls all of them. So basically it just fades out all layers. But you can also do individual fading. So if you want to just keep layer 1, it's got these little small scattered clouds. Layer 2 is a more solid layer. Let's fade this one down. And then layer 3 is an attempt to do hurricane style patterns. That's quite difficult to do with the procedural maps so far, but I'll keep improving on those, I think. And then when you combine the layers, you get something like this, and then you can control the sharpness of the clouds. Tiling. Normally you'd want to be able, you'd have to keep the tiling quite low if you want to see the whole planet, because you see repetitions otherwise. That looks not so good. So the reason why it allows you to tile that as much is because if you want to have a planet that's really close up. Let's see, we move the camera back in here, let's have a look. Let's see, we go this close. Well, that was a bit too close, maybe. Maybe like that. Then the clouds, you get away with tiling it a lot more if you want clouds that close. So because you don't see obviously the repetition in the same way, so you can tile quite high then. So that's why it allows you to tile a bit more than you'd probably want in most cases. Let's have a look. Let's go back to there. And what else? So that was the cloud. The speed is how fast the clouds move around the planet, and that only animates during runtime. The height controls how high the shadow should be, and you can control the shadow amount. Like that. Lava is a bit of a tricky one that I'm still working on. So that one's disabled now. If I enable it, you'll start to see cracks in the planet. And since there are a lot of parameters controlling this, there is a high probability that you'll overdo it. Usually small cracks like this with lava tend to look good, but if you go too high, well, that works as well. But sometimes if you go too high, especially if you introduce the glow, it starts to look a bit, I don't know, low quality. So I think usually lower amounts of cracks will look better. And flow controls the speed of the lava, because the lava is actually animated if you get close up to it, and then you can change the glow color. Usually you want to keep that as some sort of an orange anyway. And then you can change the color variation on the lava. And then here are some parameters to control how the cracks are behaving. There we go. So that was the lava. And then surface, that controls the normal map of the ground. So if you want canyons, for example, textured. And then surface tiling controls how often the texture should be tiled on the land surface itself. So these two biomes that I've got below here, that controls the tiling of those. And again, you can usually tile this fairly much without it looking too repetitive because of the water and because of the way it's crossfaded. So you can get high quality from a distance, and even somewhat up close as well. So let's keep that like that. And then you can control so the biome mixing as well, and that you can also usually have a little bit higher, like that maybe. And then there are some parameters to control how the textures behave. The composition balance I showed before, so that's let's tone down these clouds a bit. So the balance between the two biomes, so that's the rainforest one now. And we fade over to the desert one. So that's all desert, and that's all forests. And then here's the contrast between the two. And these X's here is if you want to revert back to whatever the planet seed default is, then you can revert back to the seed default that if you don't want to override it anymore. And then finally you have the two biomes, and they can be controlled. So this one is the desert one. Let's fade that one in so we see it again. So this is the desert. Then those are also controllable. So the desert can fade between dark desert and bright desert. And similar to the way the composition can be faded, this can also be controlled with the contrast and balance. And again, it's just to create a lot of options to get a lot of variations here. And then color variation will do some slight hue shifting between different colors. So this is still the desert biome, and these we can change. So I've created a few dust, for example, similar to the moon, forest biome, ice, and this is blue because of the color variation, probably, or maybe not. For some reason I've got alienization. Nope. Okay, so it's blue ice. Let's change the balance. So iron oxides, that's pretty much what Mars makes the red color on Mars. Rainforests, let's bring the color up, or the brightness. Savanna and tundra. So let's keep the tundra, I guess. Again, you can fade between different parameters of that as well. And again, if you wanted to change the way these streaks are here, that's controlled with this one. So we can change to fractured instead, for example. That'll have a different look then. Okay, and so saturation controls the saturation of the color of that particular biome. The brightness controls the brightness. And then here we have controls for the layers of craters. So now I've taken away the craters for, let's fade this one in. So now this biome has no craters, but if I introduce them and put them on max, then you get the craters, and then you can also set how much bump map the craters should have, so the normal map, and also if you want diffuse to have them change color a little bit as well. And these they'll vary a little bit depending on which biome you've got. So maybe, for example, this iron oxide I think has got a different look of the craters. The dust one, I know it's got white on the craters, and so the white diffuse there, you can fade away the white, for example. And canyons you control as well. So if you want to canyons and the bumpness of the canyons as well. Let's bring the savanna back, and then now maybe it's too much bump, so we can bring down the bump level a bit and maybe take away some of the small craters. So there we go. So as you can see, I've overridden most parameters now, and then the planet supports 2 biomes, and then so you can do the same type of settings on the other one here. Let's have a look. So if I change this one to iron oxide, get the red there, and then again same type of controls here. And finally we have the cities here, and they'll support different type of textures as well. There's only one at the moment, and then when you do this it'll start to populate, so obviously not on the water, but on the land mass it'll populate with the lights from cities that shine during the night. And then advancement creates some more clustered, bigger cities as well. And then you can also change the color of the night lights. Like that. And then again, let's say I like this planet, so I can, and again these textures are 1024 now, so I can export this planet to clipboard, save that one for later use if I wanted to. And then if I wanted to do some random variations of this one now, I can I'll keep all the overrides, and then I won't override reset the overrides, and then we can change some I've overridden most parameters now actually, so I think it's not really going to change that much. It's pretty much only the liquid color that remains. And then if I wanted to, let's say I changed my mind and I wanted to bring this planet back again, I can copy, import from clipboard, and that was the planet that I had before. And yeah, if I press play, I think that pretty much covers it. And then you can bring them down, let's see, if the textures are 64 by 64, that's the lowest quality planet you'll ever see. But I think sometimes from, if you only need to render a really small picture of a planet, like this distance for example, like it is now, then I think if you only need a small picture you can go quite low on the resolution. But maybe not that low, but let's bring it to, let's check the next level, 128 by 128. That's still not too bad for using 4 128 by 128 textures. That will not use much memory at all, and if you only need to render one that is about that size, then you're not far off actually, I think, being able to get away with that. And then the next level would be 256. Then you can get a little bit closer. Probably still okay at this distance actually, like that. Nearly a quarter of the screen. 512 is the next level. Then you'll be able to get, maybe not that close, but maybe this close at least. Yeah, getting closer. And then 1024, that where we're at most of the time. Then you can get fairly close as well. Oh yeah, actually, and then finally, let's do the highest one as well. The Unity doesn't support any higher texture, procedural texture maps than 2048, but they're starting to take a little bit of time to generate at that level. So, and I forgot to mention as well that we have this called coastal reach, which controls how the coast should be. So you've got a few options there as well. Yeah, okay, so thanks for watching. I'll finish off by putting up, I built it as well, and I recorded the transition from the Mars planet to a terrestrial planet, so the terraform. I recorded that in full screen as well, so I'll finish this video off with that transformation, and then I'll just keep plugging away at developing this, and I'll send another update later on. I'm hoping to release the planets during the summer now. I'm really pushing, this is my main priority now, so hopefully you should be able to get them to the asset store and into your hands at some stage in the not too distant future. So thanks for watching, bye.